We're going to sew the Essentials Tote, which is a large capacity open box tote with vinyl pockets front and back and an optional vinyl pockets on the inside, which this one I did not. So let's go sew. We're going to make the Essentials Tote today, which is a super fun large tote with big vinyl pockets on it. It comes in PDF or printed booklet. So for this panel, these are the two exterior pieces that I've already cut, and this one I've gone ahead and quilted. So I used a piece of quilt backing that I had left over, I pieced these strips of fabric. This is Annabelle Wrigley's Penelope line, which is brand new in April, and I just love it. So I pieced strips together, okay, and then placed that on the batting and quilted it with 1/4 inch lines of quilting. And I've already sewed on my vinyl pocket for this piece. So I will walk you through what I did for the second panel. So here I've got the pieces stripped, as you can see, just like a quilt. And I'm going to back it with backing. Now I don't have one full piece for the whole tote. So what I like to do is use everything up, and I just piece the batting as well. I use this Marty's Choice fusible tape for batting. These are 2 inches wide. It comes in 30-yard rolls. And you just lay it on the batting where you've joined the two pieces, and then iron it, and it fuses the pieces together. Now I'm going to put my pressing mat under here. I'll press the fabric. And it doesn't exactly fuse, but it does stick to the batting a little bit better than if you don't press it, so don't skip pressing. It does help. Okay, I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and start quilting. Now I've done this with a walking foot and with a regular foot, and both ways tend to work fine for my machine. However, I will say if you have a walking foot, use it. It just makes everything a little bit simpler. Well, my walking foot was giving me problems, so as Murphy's Law would have it. So I'm just going to use my regular foot. Okay, so now it's quilted on here. Let me back this up. And we're just going to trim that binding away. I like to use a ruler and a rotary cutter. Helps me keep straight. Save that for pillow stuffing or something. Okay, so this is ready to add the vinyl pockets. Now I know this is see-through, but it's going to be manageable because in just a second we're going to bind the top and bottom edge. So let me show you. I've made my own binding here with the fabric. You can use packaged or you can make your own, and you just double fold it in. This is extra wide double fold binding. Give it a press, and then what I like to do is take some Wonder Clips and clip it along that top edge. Tuck it in there all the way to the fold. Let me move this out of the way. And we'll just sew across that bottom edge there to secure it. So all the way across here. Now I can trim the excess off, and then we'll do the bottom edge. And the reason we don't do the side edges is because they are covered later with the straps. A quick note, this vinyl pocket is wider than tall. So when it goes on the bag, it's like this, more wide than tall. All right, let's sew the binding on. You can trim those edges flush with the vinyl. And now we will place it on the bag. I think I'm going to have this side go like this, up and down instead of horizontal. Should I do that? I think so, because that plaid is kind of freaking me out. So what I like to do is come in here, measure 4 inches down, and draw an erasable make an erasable mark, or use a hair marker. The top edge will be centered and 4 inches down from the top. Now this part trips people up because you're always told not to pin vinyl. What we're going to do is just pin within the seam allowance on the side to hold the pocket in place while we sew it down, because later we come in anyways and we cover up any holes made with the pins with the straps, so it's not an issue. Now we'll sew the pocket down. I put on my Teflon foot because this is the vinyl. Sometimes it can stop and start if you use the regular foot. Okay, the pocket is sewn on. Make sure you have the top facing up. Don't ask me why, I know that can happen. And we will place the strap. So the strap, you're going to line up the bottom flush with the bottom of the tote. And then you bring it up and see how it's covering the side of the vinyl pocket, all those raw edges are covered, is a good sweet spot is about 3.5 inches in from the side edge. So that side of the strap will hit 3.5 inches from the side. Does that make sense? That diagram is in the pattern. And then we're going to bring it up and around. Now definitely pin this in place because this will want to move on you. You can use webbing. I carry tons of webbing in the shop. I did a patchwork strap because I was just trying to use as much of this fabric as possible. I just love it. And because the tote is kind of patchworky looking with the strips pieced together, I thought, well, it works great for the strap to have a patchwork strap. And I'll show you how I did that in just a second. So then you come down on this side and repeat the process. I like to take my ruler, measure 3.5 inches in. 3.5, and just kind of have it touch the ruler there because then I know I'm straight. So now we will just sew up and over and back down again, and up, over, and back down again. In the pattern, I tell you how far to sew up, okay? So check that pattern really quickly, and then I'll meet you back here and show you how I made the strap. So this side is finished. I've got my strap sewn on. Everything's good. But I said I'd show you how I do my straps. So if I'm not using webbing, which honestly most of the time I am using webbing, I have instructions for quilting cotton on page 13 of the pattern. Now on the PDF, I'm not sure what page it is, but it's on there. It's at the back. So what I do is cut my fabric 4 inches by 60 or however long you want to make it. And then just like binding, well, it's almost like binding. I fold a 1/2 inch in on this side, 1/2 inch in on this side, and press. Let's do that quick. I'll just do this little piece here so it's manageable to show on camera. And then I'm going to bring this over so that I have a strap forming here. Those two folded edges meet. If it's patchwork style, you want to meet your seams and give it a press. Okay, so now you've got this piece like this, and then I just take literally scraps of clean or fusible fleece and lay it inside there, and then this is already trained to come over and lay down and I just give it another quick press here and use pins or clips to keep it secure while I work down the entire length of the strap. Okay, so we've got our two finished exterior body pieces. You're going to place them right sides together. Okay. Place right sides together. Make sure that your straps are tucked in, your pockets are correct, the bottoms, the straps are aligned and in the same spot. That's why we measured when we attached them to the body pieces. And put some pins to hold everything in place. Alright, so this is the top. I like to check that because I've sewn it wrong before. And we'll sew each side and the bottom with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I like to start here, come down, pivot, over, pivot, and come up. And I try to go back and lock stitch the corners on where I pivot to make sure those are really strong and secure, because we're going to cut out boxed corners next. And I don't like it when those pull apart. So now we're going to make our boxed corners. Now I like to measure my boxed corners 2 times, and I draw them. So here's 2.5 and 2.5. So I come in here with my scissors and cut through all the layers. Now you'll just kind of peel those layers apart, match up the seams here, and I push one seam one way and one seam the other way. So one seam goes this way, one seam goes this way. And I use clips to hold in place, or pins, or sometimes both. Now we'll take that to the sewing machine and sew across here. I sew at least 3 or 4 times across. What I like to do now is sew my seam allowance line with a straight stitch, and I lock stitch when I begin and end, of course, and then I come in here and I inside the seam allowance and I do a tight zigzag stitch, and that just makes a really strong corner. And I like these bags really strong because I get my groceries in these. I just love them. So useful, it'd be great. Okay, let's go sew these. Now again, you might have to stop and lift your foot to get over that middle seam. You may have to hand crank. You know your machine and what it can do. I don't have an industrial, but Bernina's, they work. They're workhorses. Okay, now I just did 2 lines of straight stitching, and I'm going to come in and do my zigzag now. Check all your seams. It's starting to look like a bag now. Yay! Look at those nice boxed corners. Okay, the exterior is complete, so now let's finish the lining. I've got my 2 pieces of lining body. Now in the pattern, I show you how to add vinyl pockets on the lining that go all the way across. I'm not going to do that for this bag because this is going to be a grocery bag, and I find pockets to be annoying when they're trying to load all the items in there. So place your lining pieces right sides together, and I have interfaced mine with SF101, fusible woven interfacing, to give it some strength and body. And we're just going to sew down the sides and bottom and do the boxed corners exactly like we did the exterior body pieces. We are so close. Now, silly me, I forgot to leave my opening there when I was sewing, so I'm just going to come in and open about 6 inches. And actually, this is totally fine with me because this way the fabric is trained to fold back together, because I like to just machine sew my bottoms closed after turning the bags. So I'm okay with this. It's not really a big mistake in my book. Okay. So now I've got an opening in the lining, and I've got my exterior bag. I'm going to make sure my handles are down. I like to tuck them in the pockets and out of the way, because now what we're going to do is put the bags right sides together. So I just open up the lining and carefully tuck my exterior bag inside the lining. And the first seams I match are the side seams. And again, I nest the seams. So one seam allowance goes this way and one goes that way. Just makes it sit better. I'll come around to the other side and make sure those side seams match. If they don't match, check your sewing seam allowance. Make sure your handles are not out. Your straps have to be tucked down in. That's a common mistake for newbie bag makers. I did it. Okay, just gonna sew all the way around the top. No opening, because your opening is down here for birthing the bag out, okay? I start near a side seam, because that's less noticeable than starting in the middle of the front or the back. And some people might want to use a walking foot here, especially if you're on the newer side of sewing lots of layers. Be careful not to push or pull your fabric. That can create wrinkles and puckers. All right, last few steps here. Turn it right sides out. Push out all your corners. Oh, I'm loving it. And then bring in, tuck in the opening seam allowance there and give it a good press. Remember, my bag is patchwork. I didn't have enough yardage to make it all one. Normally you wouldn't have a different bottom piece here. So just reminding you of that. This is one of those fabric lines that it just feels happy. It feels like a happier time, a bygone era or something. I just love it. I loved her previous collection too. Annabelle Wrigley for Wyndham Fabrics. Okay, I'm going to sew this closed and I'll be back in just a second. Trim my threads. I love these little tweezer scissors from Havells. They're so useful for trimming threads or coming in to unhook some stitches. They've got this little hook thingy on the end that I can, if my seam ripper is missing, I can just use that little hook thingy. Okay. Now, one thing I'm going to mention here, because it comes up in class, is when you're pushing your lining back into the bag, sometimes people will say, oh, what did I do wrong? It doesn't look right. You have to kind of coax this so that the lining and the exterior are pushing it in at the right place, and then give it a press. So it's not wrong if you have it folded down in there more. I've made bags where I didn't do this step right and I have some of the lining showing like a band all the way around the top. And it's not wrong, it's just different, or maybe you want to see it wants to do that, see how it wants to sit there and show. But with an iron and my fingers, I'm going to come in and just push it down correctly here, the way I intended for it to be. And then with the iron, I'll press all this into place. And then in the pattern, I have instructions to top stitch that top edge. And what that does is just holds the lining in place and makes it sit down in the bag, because I wash my bags often in the washing machine and then I hang them to dry. You don't want to, just as a precaution, don't throw this bag in the dryer if you used vinyl here, because what if you forget and your dryer is on a high setting and then it melts? I don't know if that's ever happened, but I don't want to risk it. So you can definitely wash these in the washing machine on a cool temperature setting and then hang to dry or lay flat to dry. I do it all the time with my grocery bags. I don't know why grocery bags get so dirty and gross looking, but they do. So I just wash them up. Oh, this is so cute. Every time I go to the grocery store, well, not every time, but a lot of times people ask me, oh, cute bags, where did you get those? And I say, well, I made them. And you can too. And then if they say, oh, can I buy one? I say, sure. Sometimes, or I'll refer them to a friend that makes bags and sells them. So if you have my pattern, yes, you can sell your bags. Do it so you can buy more patterns and fabric. Right? Okay, I am going to top stitch around the top of the bag and then I'm finished. I hope you learned something and had fun. I love this pattern. I can't wait to see yours and see what you make and how you put your creative touch on it. Thanks for watching.